Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. So, when it rains it pours, as it were, although in this case I guess it sleeted and iced, so my power was out earlier today, which that explains why I'm starting late today. I also had to spend so much time just getting through this XYZ festival that I didn't really do anything as far as playing Fallout 3, so that's going to be that accountability section in a nutshell, is that nothing happened. I did move one of the bookcases, one of the 6 bookcases I'm building, and then kind of merging together as to one giant table. I moved that and am continuing down that path of building those, but I'm not particularly making a lot of progress there. And in all fairness, there's also some other stuff I've been goofing off with, so I'll throw that out there too. I was playing with a program called Bird Font that lets you create fonts, thinking about making a font for dyslexic people, although arguably, even though there is one font that claims to be for dyslexic people, there's no scientific study that says it actually, there seems to be no scientific survey or study that says it actually helped anybody with dyslexia. The problem is installing fonts on iOS apps would require you to have an app on the App Store for Macintosh. Installing a font on Android basically means you have to have an app installed on Android. It's not something as easy as installing a TrueType font file or an OpenType font file or even an SVG type font file, which is really only adopted and supported right now for web browsers, but it would be the step forward because it would actually allow for colors, although arguably maybe a lot of people don't want colors in their fonts, but the option is completely missing from fonts up until that point. You could always change the color of your font, but it would be 100% changing the color of all the parts of the font. Let's see. Maintenance is going to happen. Countdowns for secret packs will run during maintenance. And maintenance may be earlier or later than scheduled. The list of rooms and match history seems to be also going to be cleared out because of maintenance. And then apparently purchases weren't recorded correctly. Some card names and texts. Blaze Dragon here. Korean alphabet issues. So that they're still putting a lot of work into it, but even though I have like 6,000 gems here, and I'm glad for that, I think they really did drop the ball as far as this festival went. It was just too much, frankly. I had to play a good 10 hours more, I think, than I wanted to, just to grind out getting these rewards. And honestly, you kind of could have stopped at 3,000 points to get the XYZ reward tickets. 3,200 gets you 100 gems, but then you start to get only like 20 gems, so the rewards start to get a little bit smaller, and legendary pack tickets are nice, but they really don't matter. And then there's no big payout after 3,200 as far as medals, so I could have saved myself a lot of time, certainly, just playing up to 3200. It didn't really cause me to create a deck that was that useful. I ended up just playing a lot of the same deck I play in ranked, and while these 3 loner decks were interesting for a little bit, there's probably should have been about 6 loner decks. Although they could have left everything alone and just had the festival be a week long instead of over the weekend and a couple days. It's like a 4-day festival. And putting out new solo content at the same time just does not make any sense at all. It is very, very ridiculous to go down that route. Sorry, I should be talking here. I'm just sitting inside. So here's that program Bird font, and my computer shut down when there was when the power went out, and I guess it didn't save the versions I had here. So I'm goofing around with this. So this is the capital letter A, which is a terrible example for what I'm thinking about for a dyslexia font, because you would have like the right way here in which a character was written. Let's say instead of A, it was B. So there would be a line here and a B hoop here, and that. And then in this version, you would just reflect it. So then it would be a line here, and then there would be a backwards B here, and then you would also reflect those to the bottom here. So there'd be a line here, and then an upside down B, upside down and backwards B, and then this would be just an upside down right way around B. And then there's inversion squares as a background here, and so there might be a different version to do that. Now if you could use SVG fonts, these would clearly want to be different colors. You would pick 4 very distinct colorblind safe colors here, and so the average person would just read the part that is here and ignore the other 3. Of course, I don't have dyslexia, so I don't know if this really helps, and that's the real thing. Is I don't know if there really needs to be a special font. In a lot of ways, it's a project searching for a problem. I did think about trying to animate something very natural, like a tree in the middle, so you could always know which way is pointing up the right way, but animating a tree would be so many brush strokes, since all of this is brush strokes and scalable vector art. It's not bitmap art. But something very natural like a tree in the middle to point which way is up is great. Also, dyslexic people seem to sometimes have a lot of things that you just can't probably account for, such as rotation. Rotation may not really help that much. Plus also just cramming, in which letters look like they're too close together, because it's a perception problem, and you can only go so far to help somebody's malfunctioning eyes and brain. And just letter replacement where letters move to the other place. So no particular font may help. It may just be better to make the font bigger. Now here's the overall overview of it, a B here, but that has disappeared. I just deleted it accidentally. The other thought would, which I think is probably better, is to windmill and 90-degree tessellate the letters. So instead of this being the right way that A is written, A would be written like here, or it could be here. Certainly still, might be better here. And then you would rotate on the center pivot point 90 degrees. So, let's see if we can actually do this. This program is fine, but it's hardly something that I could script and automate the whole thing on. Come on. Alright. So, my other thought would be to have something more along the lines of kind of this, which might be right here. What tessellating and windmilling it like this does is it creates a very interesting 4 combination image that will always look fairly different from anything else, just as far as the letters and symbols, I would imagine. You do run into the problem, certainly on how you spin this, that you might end up doing something that looks a little bit like an accidental swastika, but not that much. And what I probably would want to do is something more like this, and I would try to get each point to touch the edges almost as if they're connected, but maybe you don't want to do that. And see, that may make some symbols that this looks like it's an eye and this looks like it's an eye staring at it. But yeah, something like that to spin them in 90 degrees, creating a item that looks kind of interesting. Of course, you could eventually, if you're going to write with things this way, you would inevitably want the whole thing to connect in some kind of brush stroke. And come on. Grab that and put that there. And let's see. So this might be really what more towards the way you would want to see it without the background. And that's a much more complicated picture, certainly, to start with the letter A. Does any of this really help an average reader? No, not really. But it might be a nice little transition to a language that might help dyslexic people read a little bit better, and eventually you might learn this. And you can definitely see in this case as a theoretical proposal to a font, that you are definitely windmill-izing everything by doing this. This definitely does look like a windmill, and to the point where you may not even realize that there is a letter A here. You'd almost need like a piece of paper with a hole cut out of it, and you'd need each font to be very specifically spaced out to block 3/4 of the image. Otherwise, that's where having something like this, like a background, might be a little bit more useful. I thought about putting stripes or circles or things like that in the background, and there might be something to that. You can, with bird font, you can make a square, you can make a circle, so it wouldn't be totally crazy to potentially have a square, a circle, inverted circle, perhaps, so that each quadrant here was more separated out and looked a little bit different. Yeah, you might be able to pull something off like that. But yeah. Now I will say, playing around with that literally didn't take me maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I'm wasting a lot more time just watching YouTube than I am doing that. Of course, I only did like one letter, and getting everything exactly in the right space, exactly the right size, so every letter is the same shape, size, was very difficult. And I am also starting off with a open source font, but if this were to really take off and people were going to jump it into the next direction, they'd probably want to make their own fonts using that same style, which I'd be more than happy with if there was any real adoption. That is the problem, though, is adoption. What gets something like this into the hands of the teachers who have to deal with dyslexic students from the beginning? The almost universally notorious for being technophobic teachers that exist. So, yeah, I could easily create something and then it would just never be adopted and never be helpful. Unfortunately, that is kind of the problem with getting published, as it were, to use the scientific term of it. But that's really what you need to do is for any idea to gain any notoriety, is you either have to get published by some scientific journal that'll rip you off and probably still not be read by that many people, or get published by some other entity that has influence and can give you influence, whether it's being published by YouTube or whether it's being published on Reddit or being published in some kind of educator's magazine, anything like that in this case. So I'm definitely wondering if it would be worth my time as far as pursuing this yet another side project. I also figured out a slightly more efficient way to program my macro that opens all the video game news, and so I spent probably more time yesterday, probably 4 or 5 hours, reprogramming that program. It no longer really needs to open up a new tab and go to the new tab to figure out what tab it just opened. I was able to simply extract the name of the link, the text in the link, and use that as my marker instead of the URL of the page. Well, might as well play this. I'm gonna special summon this. Face up attack position. And destroy this. Unless this protects this. It did protect that, I think. Darn it. I should have read what this card did first. But yeah, hopefully with this new programming we'll have more stability, more efficiency, and just a better, more consistent experience going forward. I did add a extra line of code to make sure the Steam follow list loads correctly, because it sometimes doesn't seem to want to load correctly. But that does mean, once again, all of my news articles are kind of out of order today, but not a big deal. We've got it going. We've got it working. Yeah, it's not going to help me any. OpenCritic has the Elden Ring page being the highest recommended game of all time since OpenCritic started. Oh, I'd say it's probably been about 6 years ago. 97 out of 100 for top critics. 100% of critics recommend it. People seem to be really happy with it, which I guess is a good thing as far as mainstream video game journalism, because there has been kind of this slump lately where they really haven't liked anything that has come out since the beginning of the year, for what little games have come out since the beginning of the year. Also, there was, a few weeks ago, I didn't even notice it or mention it, a terrible article from I believe he's a Wired writer, the notorious quote-unquote video games journalist who couldn't get past the tutorial on Cuphead, wrote this uncritical puff piece for NFTs and Ubisoft, I believe, and it really was just very much a shill article, and beneath the critical need for video game news that should be required. I will also say I watched like the first episode of Cuphead on Netflix and fast forwarded through it, and then watched like the last episode and fast forwarded through it for the first group of cartoon episodes they released. I don't feel like there's really anything there, which is kind of shocking, because you would have thought that Cuphead probably had a lot of chance of being a decent throwback to old cartoons, and maybe even a better product as a cartoon than actually as a video game. But I just didn't feel like they were doing anything ambitious with it or different with it compared to the video game. And once your hands are off the controller and you're not really seeing, it's not like the cartoon is showing you the big boss battles from the video game and showing a player just doing it perfectly. No, they're instead just kind of showing you a cartoon based on the characters. And it's kind of worse than even I would imagine the Sonic cartoons would have been, or the Mario Brothers cartoons would have been. Because at least in the Sonic cartoons, you do see Sonic going fast, and in the Mario Bros. Cartoons, I think you sometimes see Mario beating up Koopa and trying to do something similar to what the video game actions are. I don't think there's too much of that, like, as far as the Cuphead kids, or Cuphead and Mugman. And it's kind of a misunderstanding of what I think people liked about Cuphead. They liked the gameplay. They didn't really care about the characters enough that you would need to give them any more character development. If anything, their character development is that they're from an old cartoon, so they have very little character development in the first place. So yeah, I just think it's kind of another failure of Netflix. And Netflix is getting dangerously close to having far too many failures and not enough success as far as their original products. Netflix also really got screwed from the creators of Futurama, in that they brought in one of the people who worked on Futurama to make this long-running, never-ending comedy cartoon called Disenchanted, and it's just not funny. It doesn't have the comedy writing that Futurama has in my memory. And they're getting screwed even more because now Futurama has been picked up by Hulu, and it has most of the characters. For some reason, not Bender, and I don't even know what the drama is around that. But Disenchanted takes the Mom Incorporated mother character, basically, from Futurama, and her gimmick of telling everyone to shut up, and makes that the running gag that is used more than anything else in all of Disenchanted. Is you just have characters telling each other to shut up all the time, and it's just not funny. It might be funny once in a while, but you have to balance it out with several other comic concepts and several other types of characters, and there just isn't that much there. So, but yeah, you would think, having employed one of the people that worked on Futurama, that Netflix would have been in line to pick up and fund yet another reboot of, or continuation of, Futurama themselves. And honestly, and I know I should be talking about video games here, but honestly, it does just kind of feel like Netflix's hands-off approach as far as just throwing money at content creators and hoping that you can get something good from that is failing them terribly, and they probably need to be a little bit more like a production company and actually have some oversight. If oversight turns into actual just interference, everybody hates producer interference and all of that, certainly, but some of it must actually be positive, because there's too many autists or artists out there that just want to make whatever they want to make and aren't thinking at all about whether this will actually appeal to an audience. Suppose, speaking of cartoons, a Nier Automata anime has just been announced, which is probably a smart idea. They don't really have anything here than a rough pencil sketch, which is kind of funny because you don't even need rough pencil sketches to get a flat 2D image of Nier Automata. It is funny, though, that they would bother to they would actually bother to start with Automata as a TV animation. It is certainly an admission. This teaser doesn't actually show anything. It's kind of an admission that the previous Nier games were not anywhere as popular even by the Japanese audience. Otherwise they would be starting with a Nier anime, or they would give the Nier anime a different title. But I guess it's really just all about the blindfolded anime girl with the butt cheeks and sword that caught people's attention, and they want to stick with that. I can't really blame them for selling what's hot now. Speaking of what's hot now, my favorite lewd cell phone game, Destiny Child. I wonder if people, I often wonder if people think I'm just making up this game, because it sounds frankly ridiculous. Is having a world boss, and so here's the new character being introduced as a world boss. Here you've got a anime maid girl with giant thighs and giant cleavage, and the live 2D animation that causes them to cycle and bounce. So yeah, that's the new improvement. Here is the, I imagine, special costume of a chocolate fountain and a fondue and just all kinds of sweets around her. It is quite a ridiculous game. And yeah, not every new character's outfit is insanely ridiculous like that, but most of them are. There's a very generic skin and a improved version of a generic skin as a new character. They usually introduce a couple of characters, and then they have this whole spa skin on top of that. This is an older character art, probably as a soul card, yeah, which is a flat 2D image card that they also introduced more of those. In all fairness, I will say Destiny Child is kind of a dumb game if you are actually looking for gameplay. It is so easy to automate and not play the game at all. So I really am only in it for the ridiculous lewd artwork. Here, our connection failed. But arguably, it may not even be the dumbest thing you could certainly do if you are just looking for anime waifu material. It might be some of the dumbest things you could do, though. Like, there might be a way better way if you're just looking for art. The art is consistent, though, and the art is consistently good, which, that's nice. I think we talked about this maybe a long time ago. Dying Light 2's latest console patch fixes Deathloop issues and more, and it's now available for the PlayStation and Xbox consoles. That's probably the update as to why this article came back in. Let's see. Couple people died, and I've actually found Um, found this one person that there's an actual kind of like good obituary here that John Keston died. I don't know who John Keston is. He either worked on Myst as one of the actors in Riven, actually not Riven, not Myst, or he worked on pinball tables. But you can see in this fairly like great synopsis here. Yeah, I just cannot play this game and get distracted. I might as well just sit at the screen until I'm willing to actually start splitting my attention. Yeah. And that surrender timeout is just too short. I would venture to guess he was the actor who played Gin, which I believe was the bad guy father in Riven. If not, he worked on pinballs and is well known on making pinball tables. I'd almost have to assume that his 97-year-long life helps in his obituary compared to a lot of other obituaries we see from GameDeveloper.com and mostly linking to a single sentence or something. They even in that said that he died of COVID-19 despite being vaccinated, which so often we've had announcements of deaths and people have just not said how they even died. Of course, that often, it almost feels like people put out the obituaries sometimes without even knowing the cause of death. Video Games Chronicles here says 2K has secured the LEGO license for a range of sports games, visual concepts, and UK-based Sumo Digital working on the first games in a new partnership. TT Games has been slow to bring out their new Star Wars game. What this might also lead to is people making FIFA games and putting Lego characters in it and getting rid of the FIFA license instead. And so we may very well have games that aren't that good, might be full of a lot of microtransactions that you just wouldn't be expecting. And it may just not play that well. Assuming 2K makes the FIFA games, which I don't think they do. I think EA makes the FIFA games. But we might kind of quickly run into that scenario where it is very bad games. The biggest news I imagine that's happened in the past couple of days is that Bethesda, now being owned by Microsoft, is going to get rid of the Bethesda.net launcher and migrate to Steam. So they're going to migrate games and your wallet to a Steam account, which, ooh, that means they're literally going to just have to hand over cash to Steam. What's interesting here is this also alleviates any fear that Microsoft was going to try and take the Bethesda launcher and lock it into a Windows game store or something like that. In fact, shockingly, it is kind of shocking that it's going to Steam instead of the Windows game store. In a lot of ways, this might be Microsoft saying we don't care about our own storefront, which we kind of already knew. Minigames will also have their saves migrated, with a few requiring some manual transfers. Now, I do have a Bethesda launcher account. I don't remember it. You still also will need a Bethesda.net account, but very quickly I imagine they're going to start to try to migrate people from Bethesda.net accounts to Microsoft accounts. With Windows 11 pretty much Windows 11 pretty much is going to demand yeah, Windows 11 is going to pretty much demand a Microsoft account, and Minecraft is shifting everybody over to a Microsoft account. I wish my Microsoft accounts were more secure, frankly, if they're going to do this. Seems like there's a lot of concern over Fallout 76. And Elder Scrolls Online. I guess there probably is a little bit more people who play Fallout 76 than I think do. And of course, Lego Star Wars did tweet out a behind-the-scenes video with the at the same time as the announcement of the Lego sports games, as a way of saying, hey, we're still here, we're still working on this game. Don't just expect that TT Games is going to be completely given up on and you're not going to see that game. Now, it may very well be the case that we start to see a lot fewer Lego license from TT Games in the future, or this might even be the last one, but I kind of still would like to see a few TT games made. It's just going to be, what can they license, or can they make separate games that don't require a license? Let's see. Let's go and play this. One of the things I would also say about the Cuphead cartoon on Netflix is that Cuphead intentionally had this film grain effect that caused noise and made the image look bad, and they probably did a fairly good job of toning that down while still making it kind of seem like that's happening, considering how digital compression for Netflix would make that look really, really bad. I wouldn't be surprised if there actually is a fairly large amount of technology that was invented or put into place specifically just to have film grain show up in streaming services without it causing a whole host of visual artifacting problems on top of what on top of the intended visual artifacts. Double Fine has also had a couple job listings that they posted, which looks like they're potentially working on a new game in the Unreal Engine. Which, okay, does that mean we can expect more of a turnaround or faster creation of games like, what is it, Psychonauts 2? One would hope. I don't think Double Fine is going to be allowed to just rest on their laurels. And that might be the nasty back end of being acquired by Microsoft, is that you might be given a certain amount of time to work on your current game, but once that second game starts, once that first game is done, they may start pushing you to always be in that churn mode and just always make more and more games with very little rest. Of course, there's no job out there that exists that says, okay, you did well this month, take a break for next month. Although, logically, the way humans work, that would make some sense. That's where the idea of a contractor almost would make sense, but it's not that a contractor can work for 1 month out of the year and then take 3 months off. It's just that it benefits businesses to not have to pay somebody to year round. Let's see. Call of Duty will reportedly skip an annual release for the first time in nearly 20 years, according to Video Games Chronicles. And Sony has revealed a new Gran Turismo 7 TV advertisement, if you're interested in that. Let's see. We've got, since I ran the macro a couple times, we've maybe got a few more follow games. This looks like a point and click game. It doesn't look terrible. So I kind of have to just put that on the follow list. For now, this is just a new game. I actually went through a lot of the follow list games though, and also spent some extra time after reprogramming the macro to not end up with 30 or 40 different follow list games, and just decided whether I want to keep them on the follow list or put them on the wish list. So I did some extra follow list cleanup. This bug dungeon might have something to it. Seems like you can bug the character and then he can only move in certain directions. So it might be kind of a puzzle. But it might also be not much of anything. 424 English. Let's see. Lunar Odyssey here looks like a nice visual VR experience. So I'll give that a follow. Wait till it comes out of early access and see what people have to say. Intimate relationship here. Looks like nothing. So I think we can say no to that. Deadness here. Seems to be a VR horror game. Visually a little bit more polished. What you generally don't see in these games is a real willingness to show anything human, or it's usually just one awful jump scare character. Notice that most of these screenshots, while they may be in darkness, are actually trying to show horrific imagery and not just walls and buildings. Like, somebody's really trying here. So that kind of effort, I think, definitely deserves a follow. Let's see. Co-op mystery platformer is what this game is describing itself as. To me, it kind of looks like nothing. Like a just low effort platformer. Yeah, I have to say no to this. Third party account, third party EULA, very high price for a very generic looking game. Tiny combat arena. Looks like nothing of interest. So we'll say no to that. We may end early today. I say dooming myself by even daring to suggest that. This doesn't look like anything of interest either. But yeah. since we don't have a ton of things to have to do because the festival is over, relatively speaking, it may not be that difficult. Imagine most people would be still in the throes of grinding out for victories. Right, duel in ranked mode one more time, and then duel in solo mode 2 more times, and activate 2 more traps in ranked duel, and win 1 ranked duel. So we have a lot of daily quests here, but a lot of them are kind of overlapping stuff. Here we have a game on Steam called Heroin Anthem 02 Scale Scars Oath. And if you were to look at most of these screenshots, you'd think, okay, this is just a kind of RPG platforming hack and slash game. But then the trailer kind of shows you a completely different image as you're seeing a lot of scantily clad anime girls just in a totally different art style. It's inconsistent. Now you do have this screenshot here that is more in line with that, and you do have this screenshot here that's more in line with that, but that seems like those are conversation sections of the game, whereas the actual game itself doesn't really look like that at all. Here you can see it's a very anime-esque opening. Trailer. And there's 2 of them. This one shows more gameplay. So certainly that has my attention, so I'll put that on the follow list, but I almost wonder if there isn't an attempt to deceive happening here. Here we have a game called Snout 2, which looks like a snake game with no real interest. Yep. So I'm gonna say no to that. What is this gonna do? Nothing. Nothing that should scare me, at least. Here we have a game called Hidden Floating City Top-Down 3D, which is such a ridiculously generic name. It's obviously got to be a no. Which is kind of a shame, because on the face of it, this kind of looks like a decent looking Raft clone at the first glance. It must play particularly terribly, you know, just not have anywhere as much content as Raft does. And remember, Raft as a game still is in early access and is still getting more content. You have a game called Pandemic, SCP Pandemic, which SCP is apparently coming back into people's attention because I've had YouTube suggest more SCP videos to me lately. That being said, this just doesn't, I think, work. I don't think SCP as a concept is solid enough as a concept to make sense. Like, since nobody really controls the narrative there, it's a lot smarter to make a game like Control and take some of those ideas that can make sense and put them in a game like Control than it does to try and make a standalone game that claims to potentially encompass the entire universe or meta narrative of SCP. Here we have another horror game called Lost Alone Episode 2 Paparino. Although the thumbnail says Lost Alone Daddy, it seems to be probably an asset flip horror game. So I think we can safely say no to that also. English and Italian games, not fairly common. Not fairly rare actually to have games that are English and Italian. Let's see. Activate this. Special summon this. By sacrificing that and that. Let's see. This card is sent to the graveyard. You can target one ritual monster while it space up. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects. So you might as well do that. Actually, we do need to activate a trap card, and we just missed an opportunity to do that, so I should have made a mistake there. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Moonbase Down, which looks like nothing of interest. So, obviously no to that. Return to Kurgansk. Looks like it's a Russian first-person shooter. See, the problem I see with this is this might be a little rough graphics, but there might be some actual effort behind something like this. And this is the kind of game that the fall list, I think, is kind of made for. It's in English and Russian languages. Yep, and the world is not quite at war with Russia as of this recording, as I speak, but we will have to wait and see if that stays to be the same. Same case by Friday. And I don't know how much, if any, that would really affect video games so much as anything else. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Rydo Wars, which I guess is a pun on waifu. But these aren't really anime waifu characters. They're just like chibi, more Western style soldier girls. Slightly more Western style. And overall, it just doesn't really look like much of a game. So, yeah. Next, we have a game called Mighty Castles, which I think we can say no to. Here we have Luna Supernatural Hunter, which I think we can say no to. Rising Spire Prelude, I assume, is a Prelude game, so we can say no to that. I just got smacked by something with 8,000 health while I wasn't even paying attention. Yeah, since this is a prelude, we can say no to it. And then Valkalim looks like nothing. Valkalim. We have something called Grandma's Footsteps, which seems like it's a joke kind of troll game. As best I can tell, I don't think that there's something here particularly that interesting, but as a YouTuber, it might be something me more of from this game, so I'll give it a chance. Of course, by the time it potentially had 30 reviews that were positive, the game would probably be so old that the joke and the meme would be dead and long forgotten. Here we have something called Monster Phenomena, which seems like it's a weird swinging projectile-based movement game. I just don't think there's enough there to interest me. Monarch is out as a JRPG. We've heard a lot of announcements for this. I'm not 100% sure what kind of game this is. It kind of looks like a Persona game, and it might be a good game to play instead of Persona, potentially. So far it's 85% positive with 15 reviews, so I'll leave it at that. Cops kissing each other is a weird game. Looks like it's just a beat 'em up, probably joke troll game. Although, oddly, it kind of feels like it's a troll against homophobic cops more than anything. Although you do have a blonde girl here. And the actual kissing that's being shown is between this blonde and this guy. The idea of kissing to gain powers is an interesting idea instead of all the killing that happens in video games, but I don't think it's one that too many people would find acceptable. Let's see. Don't think there's anything else I can do, so let's keep on playing. Let's not lose momentum here. I still have plenty of bookcases to build, so if I did end early today, I can put some focus on trying to build another one. The LED lights, I ordered more of them, so it shouldn't be too, maybe today or tomorrow that I'll get them. And my initial installation of the LED lights with their own sticker predictably went poorly, and they started to immediately fall off and didn't really cure. So I imagine we will have more of a case of, oh, what am I trying to say here? I'll probably have to glue all the lights down, and hopefully that works well. I think I'll try to use some wood glue on the back. Oh, it's my turn. I'm just sitting here not playing. Yep. Moving on, we have search all runes, which obviously will be a no. I'm not getting any more hidden object games at this point. anyway here does not look like a visually polished game, so that can be a no. Pointless car chase refueled doesn't look visually polished enough, so that can be a no. Gun ugly, same thing I just said, not visually polished enough. Let's see, freaky. Looks a little too asset flippy. Don't think that needs a follow either. Is there anything we can do? Well, we can pull this off and see if this destroys his strategy. And if it doesn't destroy his strategy, then we can just attack directly. We'll just attack here and lose. That is something that I need to start really embracing, is if I let the opponent control how the game ends, it's just going to take another 40 seconds. So I might as well just defeat myself and in the game so we can avoid a potential surrender situation where I get distracted. Here we have a game on Steam called Necrotopia, which looks like a platformer. There might be something here, there might not. Certainly, well, I guess English language is not supported, it's Japanese only, so I'll have to leave it at that. And not bother to put it on the follow list. There definitely are games when they have that darker visual aesthetic that it catches my attention more than something like Wii Tanks here, which is just a top-down tanks game, tanks clone. Which, yeah. Obviously, that's going to be a no. Is it worth it on the first turn to bring up this guy? Yeah, we have a game on Steam called New Century Galaxy Legend, which just looks like a shoot 'em up game, and it doesn't even seem like you're getting shot at by any enemies. I think you just have to fly around and miss these dots, and that is all the game is, as far as I can tell. Free to play, so the price is right at least, but obviously that's going to be a no. The World According to Girl, some kind of roguelike deck building game that has this very otome visual novel feel to it, which that might be a very good might be a good combination or way to bring out a story without being crazy, is just put a generic collectible card game, deck building game around it. Although also I would say the animation here seems a little rough, so to have better gameplay you might be sacrificing story and animation and what otherwise I would assume had started off as a visual novel, and clearly isn't that anymore. Here we have another solitaire game that's not even widescreen, so that can obviously be no. Here we have On the Earth Shift, which I think is a too dark joke VR game. So it's free again, but not anything that interests me. Here we have another puzzle game, which will obviously be a no. Since I changed what is used as the anchors in my programs, I did need to run successfully the program at least once, so it could make a marker to say, alright, instead of looking for URLs, we are now just looking for words as our anchors. And since the words are fairly unique, there shouldn't be much problem there. I guess there might be a situation where an article got republished and none of the title changed, and yet there was more news and articles below that. And at that point, if that did happen and it's the exact same wording and the exact same text, which almost certainly it wouldn't be for the link, then yes, I would miss out on a few articles, I would imagine, in that case. I installed Super Auto Pets. It's yet another game on my cell phone that takes up kind of the full screen and doesn't allow any other programs to run in parallel. So I probably won't stick with it too long. Honestly, as a game, it doesn't really feel like there's enough going there, because it is a roguelike, where I would have preferred something closer to a roguelite, L-I-G-H-T, where actual progress would be saved and improvement would be saved, and I just don't think that's the way it's built, as far as I can tell. But as a cell phone game, it's a little addictive, and it's simple, so it makes sense. Moving on, we have the Chronicles of Hercules, Wrath of Kronos, which is just a match 3 game, so we can obviously say no to that. We have a game called Blinky, which looks like nothing. We have Lords of Slumguard, which looks like some kind of real-time strategy game of no real interest. Like, I'd be willing to play something like Age of Empires or the original Warcraft that looks like this, but I definitely don't want to play any new games that look like this. That is just asking a lot. Here we have a game called Acceleration, which looks awful, so that is an easy game to dismiss. Here we have Danger of Loss, which looks like it's some kind of Lemmings platform builder game. Yeah, I don't think there's a game here worth playing. Yeah, seems just to be a level editor and nothing else. We have Mr. Rayner's Solve It service, which I don't think there's enough visuals here for this to work. Few pictures, few bits of text, it feels like, and a whole lot of nothing else. Here we have a game called Smash Ball, which I don't think this really is a sports game as much as it's trying to pretend it is. $5.50 is an odd price, and oddly it contains nudity. It definitely feels like it's all over the place, but I don't think I can quite peg it as 100% being garbage yet, so I'm going to give it a follow just out of a abundance of caution. Here we have Milling Machine 3D, which there is definitely a question about, do you need a game to simulate every single machine you might have in a shop, or should there just be a simulate your shop experience in a video game, or should none of it exist because it's not really doing anything for anybody. Like a milling machine in particular is a fairly expensive, high level of expertise needed. Here, as they're showing bits being broken. Yeah, you need to really know what you're doing as far as this command and controlled CNC or hand controlled CNC. I could see something like this being educational though for students to say, hey, in next year we're going to let you students try and use this kind of machine in your woodworking class, but for now we can't risk you breaking a $5,000, $10,000 device, so use this PC simulator instead and learn the ins and outs. It almost makes sense. Computers are pretty cheap, so having a computer that could run up software would probably cost only less than $1,000, whereas a milling machine itself easily could be $10,000 or more. Although I have to really question at what level of schooling would you really be allowed to use a milling machine. It would have to be some kind of vocational shop class or something like the 3rd or 4th year of a shop class. It's not a terrible thought though, that to start off with 16 or 17-year-olds having a shop 1 and then next year shop 2, shop 3, shop 4, so that people know how to build their own things and repair their own things. Although perhaps home maintenance makes a lot more sense in repair than knowing how to mill out metal work for very custom jobs. There aren't going to be that much need for millers, although there might be, frankly, if we started really building things in America instead of importing things cheaply. There probably would be a huge demand for skilled labor, expert labor in the United States. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com has an article here. Square Enix says the Guardians of the Galaxy undershot its launch expectations. I felt like the hype was a little low for Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think I am leaning 99% of the way with everyone else's feeling that Square Enix is just an idiot company when it comes to expectations. And particularly, they seem to set really high expectations for Western companies that they work with or own, and then very low expectations for Final Fantasy companies and Japanese companies. There very possibly is a miscommunication there where the Japanese are demanding assurances and promises that can never be met, or the Japanese people are believing promises being made to them that they shouldn't at this point believe, and they should know that there's a level of puffery and exaggeration and lying, frankly, that happens as far as game development companies and their promises. They announced the PlayStation VR 2, and Game Developer and other sources now have a picture of what it is going to look like as far as the headset and the handles. They were slow to show that off, so kind of seemed a little unimportant or ridiculous to announce it when you didn't have everything ready to go and ready to be shown. Speaking of announcements, House Flipper 2 has been announced. That being said, I think it is worth pointing out that the DLC for House Flipper 1 I don't think was as well received. Yard maintenance DLC, or what was the other one, like garage cleaning, doesn't make a lot of sense. And this trailer seems to not really show any part of actual gameplay unless this is the level of visuals you can expect from House Flipper 2, which maybe it is, but I don't know if there's going to be 2 or 3 times as much content in House Flipper 2, or 2 or 3 more times things you can do or decorate in a house. Even when the House Flipper 1 came out, there's very valid reasons to hate the idea of house flipping and hate people that do it, even in a virtual stance. And that has only become more so the case nowadays, as houses are just more expensive than they were then. The general idea of flipping a house is a bad idea. You should buy a house, repair it, maintain it properly, and sell it at a fair profit, not buy a house, cosmetically change it so it looks like it's a much more expensive house than it really is, not fix any of the plumbing or the foundation issues really, or anything that can't be seen, wiring, and then sell the house as if it is 3 or 4 times worth what it actually should be worth. Moving on, Gamatsu says a Plague Tale Requiem Collector's Edition has been announced. So, seems to be a lot of Collector's Edition junk. A vinyl record, a statue, a big box. That does seem like a lot. Didn't come with a fake rat, though, and I guess that's probably not something people would want. Gamatsu says Aqua Plus has appointed a new CEO in Minoru Noda. The president, Naoya Shimokawa, has been appointed the COO. What does the second O stand for? It's Chief Executive Officer. And Chief... I don't know. I don't know what CEO... It slipped my mind as to what COO is. I know it's below CEO. Let's see. Void Trim... TRLM2 / Void Terrarium 2 has been announced for PS4 and Switch, according to Gamatsu. Famitsu has its review scores for issue 1734. They've given the Doraemon Nobita's Little Star Wars 2021 for Switch a 28 out of 40. That's pretty low. Dying Light 2 has gotten a 33 out of 40. That's slightly better than average. The Forgotten City, which, boy, is that late to the party to be just now reviewed or released in Japan, getting a 32 out of 40. And then Rugby 22 got 28 out of 40, which is a pretty low review too. Megaton Musashi Free Update Volume 3 Blue Lightning launches February 24th, and Get a Robo and Mazinger Z collaboration have been announced, which I imagine not too many people in the West know Get a Robo or Mazinger Z, which are two older super robots or robot animes. Yeah, I can see the beginning of the end here. It's still fairly far away, but we may be at a point where I can clean up most of this. Win a duel in ranked. Win a duel in ranked. Duel in solo 2 times. When an opponent monsters attack, your opponent takes damage. We need to work towards that one. As far as another secret thing. There might be something new after this maintenance, but I wouldn't be surprised if there actually isn't. Where are we at here? We're at like 220 of these packs. And it might be wise if to start thinking about opening up these packs, or opening up at least 100 of them, which would give me 200 cards out of potentially 4,000. Because if this group of legacy cards decides to grow bigger at some point, it would be ideal to get all of them now instead of later. Plus, if there's a room for any kind of duplicates, I don't think you will get duplicates, though. I don't think you will until you have at least one of everything. And this whole legacy collection really is just all the cards you would have seen in the anime. So it is just an expanded concept on the first series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or an expanded concept on what I did in trying to get all of the I think this is actually a pretty good card. These 3 cards, if you can get them all. And it's an expanded concept on just trying to get all the God cards and opening a bunch of packs to get the God cards. At this rate, I could probably buy 500 cards of the next expansion, and I just don't think I need to. We'll see, but it might very well be that 100, 200, well, that would just be 10 or 20 packs. Might be enough. And it could get overwhelming, certainly, too, if I'm opening 10 packs of legacy cards and 10 packs of other cards. Of course, the other danger certainly is, yeah, I remember playing this card quite a bit. The other danger certainly is that I start opening 10 packs of this, and then it opens a whole bunch of secret decks, and then there is at least a consideration to try and get the secret decks and get all the cards from the secret decks. And if you have one of these 4,000 cards, how much of that overlaps with these 6,000 cards? Is it none? Is it some? Like, if you told me actually this amount and that amount don't overlap at all, and then that's how you get to 10,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards, that would be interesting, certainly. Alright, anyways, back to dueling. Sticking pretty much at rank 4 or 5 at gold, which is not terrible. It's not amazingly great, but it's not terrible. Continuing into the news, Elden Ring has a launch trailer. It's due out February 25th. If you need more hype for Elden Ring. Atelier Sophie 2, The Alchemist of Mysterious Dream, has a theme song trailer. If you need more hype for that game. Elix 2, or Elix 2, Explanation trailer is also out. Which, if anything, this would be the trailer I might want to see more than anything. It's just because I don't recall Elix 1. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like it is a Horizon Forbidden West with just slightly different characters and probably slightly different story. Of course, a lot of games could probably be described as a Horizon Forbidden West style game. Open world climber platformer in which you're fighting random generation of enemies is not crazy. Monster Hunter World-esque might be a better reference, but I don't know if that even is the first instance of that. Let's see. Wonder Boy Collected has been announced for the PS4 and Switch. 4 classic Wonder Boy games in one. So, check out that article. Tencent has acquired Inflection Games, and Nightingale has joined the Level Infinite lineup. Those two announcements are probably connected. I imagine Nightingale was either a game or a subdivision under Inflection Games. So, we have yet to see a lot of acquisitions of anything big or notable around Chinese companies like Tencent, but it is believable, certainly, that is in the cards. I don't think we're going to have a situation where it's just off the table that other companies around the world aren't going to start to get on board with the acquisition train just to compete. Oh, by the way, speaking of Ubisoft, in the last recording I talked about Ubisoft saying they were open to any acquisition offers, that they'd certainly look at it. It was Viacom, which is the viaduct monopoly that Napoleon set up in France, that was trying to hostilely take over Ubisoft for all those years. So it is kind of ironic, after all of that, that now they're pretending like they're open to an offer. Of course, a lot has changed since then, so it might be open to an offer, even from somebody like Viacom. Viacom has a big presence as far as TV production, or at least they did in the United States. I think it was Viacom. It's not Vivendi, but I could be wrong. Gamatsu has the same article here. Bethesda Softworks is going to retire Bethesda.net launcher. It really doesn't make any sense to have an exclusive launcher. Here we have a Wall Street Bet game, meme game on Steam. We can obviously say no to that. Here we have one called Aladdin Save the Princess, which visually is just not polished enough, unfortunately. It seems to be kind of a collection of mini games and infinite runner concepts. I'd like to see more people try and make stories based off of public domain stories like Aladdin, things that Disney has tried very hard to just steal and claim as their own. But I'd also want to see some actual effort put into it. This is not a game that looks like it has effort put into it. And neither is Late Photographer 2 Free as a shoot 'em up game. So I'd say no. Graph War also looks like nothing of interest. So no to that. Ghost Castle. I like the visuals here, and so I think I might make an exception and put this on the follow list. But don't think there really is much of a game here. Looking at this trailer, it does just kind of look like it's a it does kind of just look like it's a dungeon crawler with some asset flipped characters. Yeah. It's kind of a shame. It's free, so I guess the price is right. I'm still losing over here. Man, these one-turn kills. They are a nightmare. Next we have a game on Steam here called Vacuum Ball, which doesn't look like anything of interest. So, no to that. Here we have Hidden West, which I assume is a hidden object game. Yep. So, obviously no to that. Here we have a game called Behind Border Zone, which looks a little too asset flippy, and it kind of looks all over the place. Sci-fi, dinosaurs, in the forest, in the city, flying cars. Yeah, that is too much randomness. Far, far too much randomness. Starting to yawn. Here we have a game called Battle for Droid Station, which looks like nothing. Of course, they're comparing that to the Force Unleashed for only the reason that it has droid in the name. And there aren't even really droids in the Force Unleashed that are important. There's like one important droid in the Force Unleashed, and that's it. And he's not even a big important character compared to at least 3 or 4 other characters. Play this, take this. Activate this. Summon this. Put that in the field. In the graveyard. Here we have a game on Steam called Baleful Tower, which looks like garbage. Here we have a game called Runaway Skydancer, which also looks like garbage. Yeah, I don't know what you could really do with a crazy wavy tube man as a character in a game. You could probably have some of these around in a level and have them like bump into things or explode when shot, like exploding barrels, and that might be somewhat funny, but I think that's about all you could do with them. You could try to make some kind of like balloon game where they're trying to bounce things around and control things with physics. And maybe that would make some sense. I could see just like a generic first-person shooter in a car lot or something like that, where seeing one of those around and being able to shoot and deflate it would be funny. But that's pretty much all I could see doing with it. And that kind of highlights where somebody has wasted their time and energy 3D animating a wavy tube man when there really is unlikely to be any demand in any game to ever use that kind of art asset 3D model. Next we have a game on Steam here called Unwind, which looks like nothing. So I'm going to say no to that. Seems like it is just a sandbox game with no actual game in it. Now, here we have the sinking structure Cleon and Lost Child Log 2. What's funny is the first one of these was released just a couple days ago, and all of a sudden we have another one. And the only game that they've ever had any kind of reviews for is this piece of memory that is mostly negative. Visually, it doesn't seem like they're getting better. It looks like they're kind of getting worse as far as making games. And so now they have a 1, 2, and maybe 3 of this game. This 2 is free. So they're kind of just flooding Steam with what I could only call just really low quality animation, and I have to assume pretty low effort games even for free. There's nothing I can do here. I literally just should end the turn and save myself the frustration. Next we have a game on Steam here called Pixel Ground, which looks like it's multiple players all on top of each other. Player versus player. Yeah, it's online PvP only. Seems like a flat chibi 2D animation for characters when you're going to have a whole bunch of battles, large scale combat battles. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So I have to say no to that. Next we have Clay Shooter, which in general I'd like something that was a clay shooter simulation, but in actual practical implementation here, this looks awful. VR, a little too expensive for a VR game considering what it looks like also. So that's going to be a no. Malfunction first person shooter here also looks like nothing. We still are kind of just banging my head against the wall as far as this ranked play. You can't re-roll the daily quests as far as I can tell. Let's see, here we have something called the Sync Story Human Being, which looks like a very rough oil painting style art on a visual novel that I think is Russian only. Yep. So obviously that's no. Final Fantasy VI is out now. Leave it on the follow list and consider it later. Mega Factory Titan. There. Looks like another one of these Factorio games. And yeah, I just don't think I ever want to play any of those. Here we have a game called Save the Bear Cubs, which looks like a generic platformer. Obviously nothing of interest. Here we have a game called Battle Brigade, which probably is a joke fighting game, but there might be something to it. I wouldn't put it past the fighting game community to make a really good, well-programmed fighting game that just visually looked pretty bad. That being said, as kind of a novice to fighting games, as someone who hasn't really played any of them, I think it's pretty obvious that having an extra stamina bar down at the bottom here is a sign of ignorance. There's just way too much going on the screen right now to really have any faith for this. So I'm going to take this off the follow list. I don't know why it was on the follow list in the first place. And then we have like GameDeveloper.com saying Bethesda is shutting down the PC game launcher. We had already talked about that. There is a report that Activision Blizzard has pushed next year's Call of Duty title to 2024, which again, if Activision Blizzard is getting acquired, pushing it maybe Microsoft's, maybe that's Microsoft's acquisition having an effect. Maybe that's a positive effect, I would almost assume, because there's been this long held rumor / belief that Call of Duty's having to come out every year has led to Call of Duty games getting progressively worse or just being mediocre. Certainly with Microsoft too, you now have Call of Duty and Halo, and those two cannibalize their audiences fairly well, so you probably would want at least a 6-month window between a proper release of Halo Infinite and Call of Duty and any other Halo game. Let's see, moving on. Steam users can now check how many of their games are compatible with Steam Deck. New tool will reveal what sort of experience players can expect when start digging their library. Anyone looking to check compatibility on the Steam library will need to visit the new My Games pages and sign into Steam. Valve is encouraging users to check back often for updates as they continue to test more titles. Alright, let's do that. So, already logged in. It is part of Steam, store.steampowered.com. So, here are the games that are verified for the library so far that I own. Having owning like, I own at least 1,000 games. So I imagine this list would go on for quite a long time. I am seeing a Lego game, I'm seeing a Rocket League game, Castle Crashers, Pluto, Cuphead, Binding of Isaac, Repentance. That would be a big one for me. Sakura Clicker, Bayonetta. A lot of these I assume are going to just be assumed that they work fairly well. Haven't gotten around to playing Hand of Fate 2 or this Ninjago game. In fact, quite a few of these I haven't gotten around to playing. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. I don't think you can get that anymore. Oh, thinking about games that you can't get anymore. Madhead, apparently, either their publisher or Valve themselves has removed the Agony unrated DLC and de-linked it from people's ownership. So it is just like straight up gone from the storefront. The problem with this though is if this is actual censorship from Valve, everybody's being way too quiet about it and it's not getting reported on. And frankly, I just don't have enough faith in Madhead, considering how their game was bad and there's just other issues as to how it was released that makes me suspect that there's actually just shenanigans going on from either the developer Madhead or their publisher, which there was a whole fight between that also. Well, that cleared the field here, but it's in the turn here. I suppose it is also worth mentioning that's the end of what they're willing to show. It's not the super longest of lists of games, frankly. Considering what games I own, that's a fairly small list. Remember though that these games are also going to be at somewhere around 70-80p as far as actually running, so there might be interface issues, there might be problems, and maybe a lot of those have already been identified and put more in this playable category, which you can definitely see that there's more Lego games and more games I think I generally would want to actually play in the playable category than the guaranteed to work out of the box category. And a lot of these games that are labeled as playable, like Regency Solitaire, are kind of dead simple games, so there's not a great argument for like Fallout 2 to not work and be playable out of the box. And Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the newest Tomb Raider game, so you kind of expect that to work if the previous Tomb Raider games worked, but it seems like there's a lot of inconsistency here. Tomb Raider Anniversary. And then let's see the real ones as far as just completely unsupported currently, because that's where I imagine the long list is going to be. Let's see. Let's play this. Just summon this. And we'll go ahead and play this one. I'll take this. Summon this, sacrifice this, to summon this. Ah, I shouldn't have summoned that. That was bad. Because then this is going to straight up ask me to destroy something. Yep. So incompatible games here. We see Temple of Osiris, Lara Croft, Darksiders 1, Darksiders 3, Hellblade VR version, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Catherine Classic. So there's the VR Lab, Moero Chronicle, which odd that it's been tested and they know it doesn't work. Outlast, Insurgency, Just Cause 2. Chuzzle Deluxe, which I don't even know why I have that game. And then there's another 1,407 games that have just been untested in my library. So this is really showing me probably less than 200 games, some of which it's saying specifically it knows don't work. Again, I just surrendered because I didn't play fast enough. Even the warning when it beeps doesn't really give you enough time. It's not like that burning rope in Hearthstone where it makes a very loud noise and then starts burning very quickly and then ramps up the urgency as you get close to actually ending your turn. And even in that, the rope in Hearthstone just ends your turn. It doesn't make you surrender the entire game. You only concede or surrender the game if you just not played in a couple of turns. Which I feel like that was way more balanced. See, GameDeveloper.com says Activision Blizzard missed revenue targets due to underperformance of Call of Duty Vanguard also. Which, yeah, same story, it's just not Square Enix now. It's Activision Blizzard. But yeah, if you needed more evidence that the annualization of Call of Duty games has hurt the Call of Duty series, there it is. GameDeveloper.com says Bobby Kotick will net $15 million if fired without cause by Microsoft, which $15 million is a lot of money, but it's hardly a huge golden parachute to get rid of someone who probably single-handedly eliminated well over $15 million in valuation of the stocks of Activision Blizzard. So firing him may very well get a bump to the shares that would be then in the hands of Microsoft for Activision Blizzard. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting distracted here trying to get Destiny Child wrapped up on the dailies before the maintenance happens tonight. Yeah, I could, well, that's the thing is, I guess if you're acquiring them, will the public shares, like, I guess that is the question, is will Microsoft potentially go up $10 million if they fire, or $15 million or more if they fired Bobby Kotick on day one? The answer might be yes. So it may still be very viable to do that. It's hardly, I feel like I've heard of golden parachutes for 100, 200, 300 million dollars. Plus, they could probably strum up some cause fairly quickly and fairly easily. Yeah. Let's see. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Backbone nets $40 million to expand Peripheral Meats streaming business, which I guess this is a cell phone peripheral that also has some kind of streaming element to it. I've never heard of Backbone, though. Let's see. I guess we want to summon this one and not make that same mistake again. Draw a card. Don't activate that. Instead activate that. We have about 10 more things, and then I could probably run the macro again just to check for news. Any new news? Since theoretically that'll let me test it to make sure the program's still running well and there isn't some weird bug. Like one of the bugs I ran into as I was changing things around is that I incremented a number and then used that number in a loop when I should have used the previous incrementation of the number and then incremented the number. So normally you wouldn't have that as a problem in most programming languages because you do it like a for loop or a while. No, you do a for loop and then the number incrementation is built into that for loop. So there isn't an extra line that could be out of place. But using UI Vision, which is a very rough programming language, all you can do is use while loops, and because you can only use while loops, the incrementation is its own line. And so it's a simple matter of dragging and dropping, but you have to recognize it and put it in the right place. Here we have GameDeveloper.com saying that same article, Tencent has bought the Nightingale developer Inflection Games from Improbable. Nightingale, I guess, was a game that they are working on. Or it's a shared world survival crafting title called Nightingale. And let's see. Don't think I can do anything else, so we'll just attack. And then the last GameDeveloper.com article that we have here is an interview with IGF Chair, who is going to host the IGF Awards at GDC 2022, which I don't care about. Here we have Onichambra Origin on Steam. This one has been teetering at 70% for a long time, but I think I now know that if I am going to play one of these Onichambra games, which literally these were, I believe they're called Kaizo games or something like that, that translates literally to shit games or poop games. That's originally what Onichambra was all about, Onichambara. But the original Onichambra's got enough following to have a 15th anniversary reboot, and still kind of low effort games, but I now know that, so I can barely put it on the wish list, and I know what I'm getting into if I was going to buy an Onichambra game. Although, in all fairness, that is probably one of those games that would almost have to be gifted to me if people really wanted me to play it. Here we have one from 2020 that's a visual novel. It's a little rough in the animation, so I think we have to say no to that being on the follow list. Here we have something called One Last Memory, which I think I'd like to have a little bit more reviews, even though it's mostly positive, just to make sure it's really worth talking about. So I'll leave that on the fall list. Whereas One Last Dungeon has no reviews, so that can leave the fall list, and we're just doing the fall list cleanup here. Here we have a one-hand clapping music rhythm game. You solve it by singing or humming into the music. Yeah, I'd have to really think about that. I don't think I would really play that kind of game. Here we have a visual novel game that's still early access. We could give it a little bit more time, but I bet that's gonna leave. On the Verge is from 2020, and that can leave the fall list. On Target Darts. I will remove On Target Darts as soon as I find a better darts game. But I have yet to see that, particularly one in VR. I don't care about it being in VR, but it would make a lot of sense to do VR. Olympic Games 2020, it being 2022 as the official game and being mixed. Obviously that can leave the fall list. Yeah, and unfortunately here, I guess what's going to happen is either I'll play off screen and hopefully get a lucky victory, or I will just go play a couple duels in solo mode to get rid of a couple of these daily quests, and hopefully that will leave us enough room to have daily quests for Friday. Yeah, Friday. Here we have a game called Ollie Op that needs more time, and Old Gods Are Rising. Well, unfortunately, I think I need to go to the bathroom, so I might as well just wrap up here. It's only been 2 hours, which that seems to be a large shift. I guess I'll put this on the wish list. From the 4 hours we went on Monday. So there's a little inconsistency here, I would say. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. By the way, I'll mention, if you're having any computer trouble, update your NVIDIA driver, update OBS if you're using it. I think there's probably an NVIDIA issue that has now been fixed. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.